All right, everybody, welcome back. We are continuing on to Module 7.2. We're continuing looking at eukaryotic diversity. So in our last module, we started to look at a broad clade of organisms that exhibit bilateral symmetry. And that's where we're going to start to pick up in this lecture. So again, bilateral symmetry are organisms that have no clear right or left halves, and they mirror and they're mirror images of one another. So you can basically slice it down the middle and have a mirror image of one another. And this is where we really start to get more complex behaviors that we start to associate with quote unquote higher level mammals or higher level animals. So we start to see adaptation for seeking food, stalking prey, and also avoiding predators. Now we get some of that with the Nindarians, as you probably saw from your previous from the previous video I assigned. But this is where we're really starting to get much more complex behaviors and also a greater organization of body plan. So let's start with the flatworms. So flatworms are, again, we're still in the realm of invertebrates. So we don't have a physical spine yet. And for flatworms, we have these really soft body invertebrates. And they have no respiratory or circulatory systems. And that's the reason they're able to stay so flat. So they actually respirate basically through diffusion. And their digestive system only has one opening. Next in these broad categories, we have mollusks. So again, these are mostly soft-bodied invertebrates, but they generally have some sort of hard shell. And in the case of octopus and squid, you can think of their beaks as that hard shell. So that's sort of the large characteristics that you start to associate with mollusks. And next we have annelids, and this is starting to get into worms. So these are segmented worms, and the word annelid actually means ring in Latin. So each of these you can see are a ring or a segmentation, and so that's why this group is broadly known as segmented worms. So the next major adaptation that we start to see that starts to separate these groupings is the formation of complex body cavities. So where before we really only had sort of very loosely formed body cavities, now in these new organisms, we start to see much more organization and cavity space, and this is what we eventually start to evolve to have a backbone. So the clade that is by far the most abundant is arthropods. So these are insects. So they are by far the most abundant invertebrates on Earth. They have a segmented body, jointed appendages, and hard exoskeletons. And you can see here, this is actually basically looking at all of the different clades of arthropods and their species rich and their relative species richness on Earth. So the more red an area is, the more species rich an individual clade is. And again, these include essentially all insects that live on Earth. Our next group that's up there that sort of has those defined body cavities but don't have vertebra are nematodes. So nematodes are essentially worms, and these worms are unsegmented. So you can see that they have a smooth body compared to the worms that you saw previously, the annelids, and they have tubular digestive systems where they have an opening on both ends. So many of these, and probably some of the nematodes that you're most familiar with, are going to be things like whipworm and other pathogenic worms such as tapeworms. And then finally, the last main clade that we're going to talk about is the are the echinoderms, and these have an endoskeleton and a spiky outer skeleton. So these are things like starfish are probably the most common ones that you think of, or sea urchins. And this literally means from the Greek spiky skin or hedgehog skin. And finally, at the very end of this tree, we're looking at chordates, and in this case, when we're thinking about vertebrate chordates, this is where you sort of get into sort of what you think of as classically defining as animals, where you have fish, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. And this is just several examples from your book looking at the specific forest of the different types of chordates that live within that ecosystem. So now we've sort of gone through these main branches here at the right side of the tree. Then these are again um, organisms that are more organized, have body cavities, and have a much have more complex, or what we think of as more complex biology. So with that, that sort of sums up the whole spectrum of what animals really encompass here on Earth. So we're not just talking about, when you think of animals, you often go immediately to your amphibian, mammal, reptile, and that classification, but we're actually really talking about a much more rich and diverse spectrum of animal life. So from here, we're going to start to think, okay, so now we understand animals. What other clades exist within this family of eukarya besides plants and animals? And that's what we're going to pick up in our next lecture. Okay, see you soon.